Hello, everyone. Okay, now this is assignment 3 or skills related thoughts, and this assignment is basically related to language skills. And in most senses, in this assignment, you will be focusing on a reading text or a listening text. So it's related to receptive skills more or less. Now, this assignment has many sections. The first section that you will need to complete is saying why you think the text you have is suitable for the learners and what adaptations or changes you might make in the text. Now, in some centers, they would give you the text, which is fine. In some other centers, they would ask you to choose the text. So you will need to be careful when you're choosing your own text. And again, it will need to be related to the level, and you will need to mention why you think it would be suitable. And in this section, the first one, you will need to consider some things. For example, the level. You will need to consider the vocabulary, whether they are difficult or easy. And you will need to consider the length of the text. Okay, and you will need to consider the structures mentioned. Also, you will need to consider the topic, whether it will be interesting for the students or not, and if they will be motivated to read such a text or not. Okay, you will also need to consider their cultural differences, whether the text will be culturally appropriate for the students or not. So these are the items you would need to cover in the first section, which is the why section. And then in the second section, you will need to suggest a lead in for the text, and you will need to mention the reason behind using a lead in language in receptive skills lessons. Why do we need a lead in? And why do we need to lead the student in the topic before they start reading? Then you will need to mention the reading sub skills you would be practicing using the text, whether they are using reading for gist or reading for a specific. Normally in that section, you will need to mention two reading sub skills. Okay, and we will have a look at some of the examples later on. Okay, and then after you mention your sub skills, you will need to design and submit two tasks for these reading sub skills. And while you're describing the sub skills, you will need to mention why, what rationale you have behind giving students such tasks, why it's important to help students improve on the sub skills. Okay, this is the why, and then you will need to mention or describe a productive language skill, speaking or writing, to help students respond to the text. And again, you will need to mention why. And finally, you will need to mention the references used. And of course, all the tasks you mention or describe should be included in the appendix, not in the body of the assignment. Make sure to include it in the appendix. Now, let's have a look at the sample. So, for example, this is the first part, why the text is suitable. Okay, and you will find that the person mentioned the title of the text, where it's from, about that topic, whether it's interesting or not, whether they have been exposed to it or not. Okay, the level of the students, the vocabulary, if there are any unfamiliar vocabulary, etc. And then here is just a quick outline to what you will mention in the body, like what receptive skills would be mentioned, what productive skills would be mentioned. Again, you will need to choose one of them, not both of them, speaking or writing. This is why I wrote optional. So just one of them. And then here you will need to describe your stages. Like, for example, in the lead in or the prediction task, what would happen? So description and the rationale. In the first while reading for gist, the description, and the rationale could be something like this, for example. And of course, for each rationale, you will need to find a quote to support your opinion. Okay, so the rationale cannot be just a quote. No, you will need to mention your opinion and support it with a quote or a paraphrase of a quote from a book, from a resource book. And again, you will need to describe your second reading sub-skill or listening. And it could be something like this, for example. Okay. And you will need to mention the rationale or describe the rationale. Of course, I haven't added a complete sample, but you will complete all the sections. I'm just giving you an example on different sections. The post-reading, you will mention the speaking task or the writing task, describe it, the rationale, and the bibliography. You will mention the references. Now, in the appendix, you will include the tasks. Okay. So, for example, this is the second reading. Okay, etc. Okay, so you will need to mention or you will need to attach the tasks you will use that you described in the body of the assignment as if you are using it with the students as a task similar to this. So you will need to mention reading tasks, like 2 reading tasks and 1 productive. So in total, in the appendix, we need 3 tasks, 2 reading, 1 productive. Okay, or 2 listening and 1 productive, depending on your assignment. Okay, now these are some of the common pitfalls that might cause you to resubmit your assignment. Okay, so make sure to read them carefully. And again, if you still have any questions in relation to any part of the assignment, please go back to your tutors.